That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. Guys, I understand. We really only have about 1 to 2 quarters of football that actually matter that we are going to be looking at here. But you have to cut me some slack. Like I said in yesterday's video, I have been doing real money fantasy football drafts since February. This is my entire life. This is what I live for. So now we finally have football again. You better believe I'm going to talk about it. And no, you can't drastically alter your rankings because of the limited action that we saw. But there are going to be very useful things that we can take off based on the usage and the snap counts that we have from certain offenses. So I'm going to be very excited to talk about some losers for week 1. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason. Yes, guys, your opinion means the world to me. So please make sure you leave it in the comments section, but don't just tell me I'm stupid because you're not doing anything there. We all know that I'm stupid. You have to tell me why I'm stupid and what I am missing with your comment. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Going 30,000 subscribers, should hit that today. I'm recording this when we're at like 29.9 thousand. So maybe even by the time you're watching this video, we have hit 30,000 subscribers, which of course would be massive. But yeah, let's dive into these losers. Let's talk about these guys that should be at least, maybe you're considering starting to move them down your rankings, but definitely not making any rash decisions right away. And the first guy, and I know a lot of y'all weren't drafting him because he was going a lot later in drafts, but I draft in some extremely deep leagues. Eric Ebron. So with Ebron, I actually thought that he was an intriguing tight end this upcoming season, and that no, he's not necessarily that talented. No, he wasn't in the best situation, but he was kind of on that fringe where if you were playing in an underdog best ball format where you could look for your third tight end at the end of the draft, then all of a sudden I was very intrigued with an Eric Ebron. Or if you're playing in a tight end premium league, maybe your league makes you start 2 tight ends. All of those different formats kind of make it where Eric Ebron, I don't want to say was a definite viable option, but he was 100% someone that you were considering in drafts. And the reason for this is that we have seen Ebron within the past 2 years be someone that you can consistently start at the tight end position. And on top of this, while yes, they bring in Pat Freiermuth, what we actually see time and time again is that those rookies tight ends, they never make an impact. Rookie tight ends are always just kind of developing. They're going to practice. They're learning how to be an offensive lineman. They're learning how to be a receiver at the same time. You have to learn 2 different positions. Well, bad news for Eric Ebron is it looks like this team's going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. They're going to have a lot of Juju, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson all on the field at the same time, which we knew, of course. But beyond this, they also had Pat Freiermuth out there on a decent amount of snaps, which of course is going to be a massive concern because if you're drafting an Eric Ebron, you need him to be out there almost 100% of the time because he's not going to give you the efficiency. And we know that there are going to be so many other receivers in that offense. So his target per route run is probably going to be pretty low. So if he's not going to be running an insane amount of routes, then all of a sudden Eric Ebron is someone that you literally can't draft. And I kind of have to just say this for everybody going out there and participating in those underdog drafts with us every night, because guys, I am sure that y'all know this by now, but the quickest way that you can support this channel, the quickest way that you can get my 2021 draft guide, my 2021 rankings, my 2021 tiers is by going out there, depositing $10 on Underdog Fantasy. That's where we've been live streaming and live drafting every single night. So if you want to see me go and spend about $100, $150 on fantasy drafts every single night in a live stream, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you support the channel by using promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy for everything we already mentioned. And let's go to our next tight end. Let's go over to Dallas Goedert, someone else that I have to sit here. I have to take my L. I mean, this was someone that I was considerably higher on compared to consensus just about a month ago. And the reason that we were is I thought there was no chance that Zach Ertz was coming back. I mean, I thought that Zach Ertz was almost a guaranteed trade target to get out of Philadelphia. Well, now, not necessarily looking that way because Zach Ertz actually has a role in this offense with the first team offense. And now let me know what y'all are thinking with this, because we have seen this before. We actually saw the New England Patriots just do this with the N'Keal Harry in this last game, and that sometimes teams will go out of their way and they'll give players that they're looking to trade away, they'll give them an extended period of playing time, and they'll give them a slightly larger role in the preseason. That way they can try to highlight them for teams to be a little more interested, to show that they are healthy and to show what they can do on the field. So I am praying that that is happening right now with Zach Ertz. But all reports I read out of Philadelphia sounds like that's not the case. It sounds like Zach Ertz is almost locked into this team this upcoming year. So please let me know what you are thinking, because I was drafting Dallas Goedert pretty aggressively. I really like the tight end talent that you have from a Dallas Goedert. Obviously, if Zach Ertz isn't there, I mean, they have essentially Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, and Dallas Goedert. That's it. They're going to be consistently throwing the ball to Goedert, because we know Jalen Hurts and those rushing quarterbacks. You look at Lamar Jackson and a Mark Andrews, they really do like to target the tight end position. So yeah, maybe we were a little too high on Dallas Goedert. Definitely something that we need to continue to monitor. And now our next player is going to be also someone a little deeper. This is going to be a Christian Kirk. We're going to keep this very brief, because I know not many people are playing in formats where you're going deep enough to draft a Christian Kirk. But on an underdog draft, I mean, Christian Kirk is an extremely important receiver. That's one thing I like about underdog, is you go a little bit deeper than just the top guys. And here with Christian Kirk, why he's falling down our rankings is this is someone that I do not think is going to be taking really many snaps in the slot whatsoever. Now, a small reason why I was a little more interested with Christian Kirk this upcoming season is we saw him last year kind of be used as a vertical threat in this offense. We saw DeAndre Hopkins play the X. We saw Christian Kirk be the field stretcher. We saw Larry Fitzgerald play in the slot. And I didn't know 100% for sure how they were planning on using a Rondale Moore. Now, Rondale Moore, of course, profiles to be a slot receiver, but at the same time, he was one of the fastest wide receivers in the entire draft this past year. So I didn't necessarily know if they were going to maybe kind of split it 50-50, where you had Christian Kirk playing in the slot some snaps, Rondale Moore running more of those vertical routes, and then other snaps having Rondale Moore in the slot where we know he can dominate with bubble screens and really the entire route tree that Larry Fitzgerald was running last year. Well, looks like Rondale Moore is 100% the slot player for the Arizona Cardinals. I doubt Christian Kirk's going to get much usage there whatsoever. Christian Kirk coming out of Texas A&M in that 18 NFL draft class, drafted in the second round, really definitely looked like he was going to be a slot receiver at the NFL level. But we have to remember, it was a completely different coaching staff when Christian Kirk was drafted than Cliff Kingsbury. So Kingsbury has no allegiance to a Christian Kirk, similar to what we said with a James Robinson going into the NFL draft, how we gave out the warning of a James Robinson being someone you wanted to avoid, given the fact that the new coaching staff had no allegiance to him whatsoever. Then you see them go draft a Travis Etienne in the first round. Very similar to what you have with Christian Kirk here. But possibly the biggest loser of the entire week 1 preseason was going to be Myles Gaskin. Okay, so we kind of said this in yesterday's video, but there were 2 running backs that I want nothing, and I repeat, nothing to do with this upcoming season. I don't want anything to do with Mike Davis, and I don't want anything to do with Myles Gaskin, because we see this story play out every single year, where there are a few running backs that we can all agree. I mean, nobody's going to go to the comment section, even though I know a lot of people are going to hate this take. Nobody's going to be able to try to tell me that Myles Gaskin is an above average starting running back in the NFL. I think if you're really using your brain, you go through and you try to rank out 32 running backs in terms of pure talent. Everybody is going to be on the same page that Myles Gaskin is one of the worst starting running backs in the NFL. But at the same time, it's the easiest thing for us to do to go out there and project him to see volume and just assume that's going to be there all year. Where you see those players that don't necessarily have the pedigree, they don't have the team investment, they don't have the talent profile. While yes, they may project to see a lot of volume in week 1, that volume, it's not guaranteed. It's going to be extremely shaky on if they actually end up seeing that. And with the Myles Gaskin, this is a running back that Malcolm Brown was the starter over him. I understand that Gaskin was better on a per touch basis, and I would say that Gaskin is the more talented running back, but who knows what the coaching staff is thinking. They go out of their way. They specifically bring in Malcolm Brown. They make the investment into him, and they feature him with the first team offense this week. And what would be just completely fine is if you see that, okay, well, maybe they wanted to save Myles Gaskin. Maybe they wanted to throw Malcolm Brown out there. They still wanted to get Myles Gaskin in the game, just a couple reps, just to see if they could try out a different play or so. But no, they actually were running out Myles Gaskin with the second team offense at one point. You cannot ignore that. That is not something you can just glance over. So with the Myles Gaskin, you have to lower him down your rankings. This was someone I didn't want to begin with, and I definitely don't want him now. Okay, so now let's go over to Indianapolis for a receiver that you better believe I was drafting, Parris Campbell. Okay, so my initial thought was that a lot of people were overdrafting Michael Pittman and naturally assuming that he was just going to be the bona fide wide receiver 1 in Indianapolis. And that if you looked at Parris Campbell coming out of Ohio State back in 2019, and you look at a Michael Pittman coming out of USC in 2020, that from a prospect profile standpoint, you actually had a way more impressive profile with the Parris Campbell. And this was a wide receiver that was more athletic, a wide receiver that was more productive in college as well. And if you look at really anything in terms of the dynamic ability of these players, Parris Campbell kind of jumped off the page. To go along with this, Michael Pittman had a very unimpressive rookie year, in my opinion, where he went out there and, he was not able to grab the wide receiver 1 role on that team despite Parris Campbell getting hurt and Parris Campbell missing the entire season. So all of these signs kind of pointed me to the fact that while, yeah, we still wanted to draft Michael Pittman over a Parris Campbell, when they were going 5-6 rounds apart, that's something I wanted nothing to do with. We were going to be avoiding Michael Pittman everywhere we could go, and instead we were taking a massive discount on a Parris Campbell, going, if we get this right, the ceiling for our profit is massive. Well, Parris Campbell doesn't look like he's going to be a full-time starter with the Indianapolis Colts based on what we saw in this preseason game. Now, like I said, guys, this is a very small sample. We can't take everything from this, but right now it looks like our initial thought that Parris Campbell was some great value, not holding up. So I'll say I'm personally going to be lowering Parris Campbell down my rankings. I think I was too aggressive on him. And y'all know I'm always going to be the first person to take my L, give my former thought process, and then say where we are standing going forward with the new information that we get. So with the Parris Campbell, I still think that he has some upside with your, I don't want to say your last round pick in your fantasy draft, but pretty damn close to your last round pick. And if you're playing in a shallower format, if you're in a 8-man league and you're not playing in an underdog format, there instead, I think we would probably rather just avoid Parris Campbell. I still think that he was very talented. I still think this is a player that could eventually be the receiver 1 in Indianapolis, but the chances of that happening as of now are extremely slim. So instead of drafting him, I probably would just put him on your watch list. And if he has a big week or two, then we go out there and make sure you pick him up. So now let's go to another deeper receiver. Let's go over to a John Brown. And here with the John Brown, I know this has been someone that's been falling all training camp because reports are saying that John Brown, while he's going to play in 3 wide receiver sets with Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards, that Bryan Edwards is starting over him every single day. And yes, you can look at that and we can get excited about Bryan Edwards, but at the same time, it's training camp. What's happening in the preseason? What's happening when they're going up against another team? Well, Bryan Edwards has won that job to the point where they didn't even have Bryan Edwards active. They made Bryan Edwards a second-year player who you would think needs that practice rep after not necessarily playing at all his rookie season. They did not play him whatsoever, and instead they rolled out John Brown, a veteran of the game that, he has no business, he has no need to play in a preseason game, where you would think that it would almost be the opposite. And what this tells us is that John Brown is a completely expendable asset for them. They really have no use for John Brown at this point. Even if you had an injury to a Henry Ruggs or had an injury to a Bryan Edwards, I think John Brown is almost undraftable. He's still going pretty dang high in underdog drafts considering what we actually just saw. I'll say that I've done about 3 or 4 underdog drafts already today. And I know I have a problem, guys. I understand I cannot stop drafting. I probably get in about 7-8 drafts a day at this point. And yes, I'm going to try to get better. I'm going to try to continue to make more videos instead of doing fantasy drafts, but I'm just so excited that we're finally here. And yeah, John Brown's still going way too high over there to the point where I can't really consider him. Now our next faller is going to be another massive one, David Johnson. Okay, so here at David Johnson, just looks like Philip Lindsay's the starter. David Johnson, someone that kind of fits that same mold that we were talking about of running backs to avoid as a Mike Davis and a Myles Gaskin, where you have this running back, he's not necessarily talented whatsoever, but he looks like he's the number 1 on the depth chart. So people are drafting him based on just the projected opportunity that he has, even though that opportunity isn't safe. It's not guaranteed for the long term. And with the David Johnson, people were definitely way too confident with what they were going to have this upcoming year. Now, I am just completely fine putting him on our do not draft list because he looks like he may not even be the running back 1. And even if he's the running back 1 in Houston, he's 100% going to be in a committee. And if he's going to be in a committee, sure, you could find a committee running back that's extremely valuable. You can go find a Kareem Hunt and you're going to be willing to draft him in the 5th, 6th round. But the difference between a Kareem Hunt and a David Johnson is A, Hunt is just significantly better, and B, you actually have him playing behind a great offensive line in a good offense, whereas David Johnson could be a washed up running back playing in a committee on the worst offense in the NFL. So yeah, you want nothing to do with David Johnson. And our last player, I know this is also a very small faller, but we're going to have Devontae Booker here. Devontae Booker was actually someone I was intrigued in one of the last rounds of a best ball underdog draft, mainly because he looked like he was going to be the primary backup running back to Saquon Barkley, where now it looks like if there was that Barkley injury, if Barkley missed a few games, then instead of Devontae Booker being that player you could start, it's actually going to be a committee between Devontae Booker and Corey Clement. And this makes us just not want to draft Booker at all. I actually was advising y'all to go out there and draft him in the last round of your league, because if the reports were true that Saquon Barkley was going to miss the first week or two, which I don't necessarily think that they are true, but we know that everything's just seen through a range of outcomes lens. Some things can happen. We don't necessarily know the exact chances of them, but we could acknowledge the fact that there's a non-0% chance that Barkley was going to miss time. I thought it was a decent idea to go pick up Booker because you could pick him up, play him for 2 weeks if you were in desperate need of a running back too, if he's going to be a 3-down guy in New York, and then you could drop him, go pick up your next player in week 3 whenever Saquon Barkley comes back. But now it looks like you have no plans of doing that whatsoever, because if Barkley misses any time, you can't start anybody in New York. It's going to be a split between Devontae Booker and Corey Clement. So just avoid the entire situation entirely. Now, thank you, my dudes. I understand that we went a little bit deeper in this video than a lot of people are probably used to, but the main reason is because I think we want to kind of go a little bit deeper in the player pool for anybody that's playing in the 14-team league, the 16-team league, a dynasty league, or those best ball underdog drafts. And for the reason that talking about more players is more fun. I can, of course, come out here. I can talk about some stud looking bad on one drive. I can talk about CeeDee Lamb not racking up a ton of catches, CeeDee Lamb not playing in the slot as much. And I know a lot of people would probably prefer to hear me talk about that. But I think it's actually, when we're looking at the preseason, going to be a lot more actionable to look at those players further on the depth charts, because those are the takeaways that you have during the preseason. You don't need to look at the preseason to tell you what you think about Patrick Mahomes. You need to look at the preseason to tell you who the running back 2 is going to be in New York, and if that player is a viable handcuff or not. And I know it's boring, but if you want to be a good fantasy football player, I think it's important. And yeah, that's all I got for you, my dudes. Make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We are live streaming every single night, so I better see you out in the live stream tonight. And yeah, that's all I got for you, and have a great day. We have had the craziest amount of support over on Patreon. Thank you, Colby, Ryan, Spencer, Seb, It's Easy, David, Justin, Christian, Tyler, and Robert. Thank you.